Hi, everyone. Welcome to Celebrating Aviation with Mike Mashat. Today, we're going to talk about building vintage Revell models of the famed Douglas DC-7 airliner. How many were there? Well, in 1955, the first ever plastic kit of an airliner was introduced by Revell, the American DC-7 flagship. A year later, they reissued the kit with ground equipment and called it the United Flight 707, ironically, airport scene. And last, in 1958, they modified the kit and introduced the DC-7C, which was the final version of the aircraft. The DC-7 was the last of the piston-powered Douglas airliners. This series started with the DC-4, which evolved from the C-54 Skymaster in World War II, an unpressurized airplane that flew at about 10,000 feet. The pressurized DC-6 300-mile-an-hour airliner powered by reliable Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines gave it a very long life. And the DC-7 powered by Curtiss-Wright R3350 turbo compound engines, slightly stretched version of the DC-6B, and this became the last of the breed. All 338 DC-7s manufactured were built right here in Santa Monica, California at the Douglas plant. Which ironically was only 3.5 miles north of the Revell factory in Venice. Here's what a brand new factory fresh DC-7 looks like rolling out of the final assembly building at Santa Monica. Okay, so it's 1955. You've saved up all your allowance and your lawn mowing money, and you've been diligent, and now you go down to the hobby shop on a Saturday morning and you buy your DC-7 for 98 cents and 5 cents tax. But you notice on the box it says all plastic, quick, easy to build, no cutting, no sanding. Well, what's with that? The reason is that the competition at that time was the Strombecker Wood series of airliners, like this Convair flagship. They also had the DC-6. And here's your direction sheet. And let's take a look at this. You basically wind up with 8 chunks of wood, a slab of sandpaper and some casein glue, and it's pretty complicated for a young kid to try and get something that looks somewhat like the airplane. But after hours and hours of work and carving and sanding and chopping and hacking, here's your Convair 240, which is a representation of the airplane, but it's not quite as accurate as the plastic. So how does that compare with the Revell kit? Well, you open the box and here's what it looks like on the inside. It's got the revolving stand and the fuselage and wing halves, the small parts in a bag. Just full disclosure, the original kit came with a cellophane bag, but over the years those got brittle. This kit was replaced with a poly bag. So here's your direction sheet of the DC-7, quite a bit simpler. You can see the halves being glued together and the detailed parts going in. But let's take a look at this. This is not just any instruction sheet. This is the assembly instructions for your American Airlines Douglas DC-7 flagship. And I have to tell you, the writing on these instruction sheets were just so educational. That was exciting. I'm sure they inspired many young kids of our generation to careers in aviation. I know this certainly did certainly did for me. But the writing was so exciting. The huge aircraft has a wingspan of 117 feet and carries 80 passengers. And that may not seem like a lot with Boeing 737 carrying 150 passengers today, but compared to a DC-3 that carried 25, that was pretty good stuff back in those days. And of course, your decal sheet. So a show of hands, how many people tried to get those stripes on an airliner and had them wrap around your finger? Yeah, me too. And here's the finished kit, really beautiful. For 1955, this was just an outstanding model, still holds up today. It was re-released in United markings again in the mid-70s, but just a stunning representation of the airplane. And again, because scaled from official plans, as they said on the box, and working closely with the Douglas engineers to get it looking really sharp. Oh, and by the way, the pilot is waving at you. The second of the 3 kits is the United DC-7, seen here. This gives you an idea of the mass of the airplane. This is the delivery ceremony with Pat Patterson, United's CEO, in the center there holding the model of the Douglas Cloudster. These markings were literally made for this airplane. Just such a elegant 50s look to it. Just beautiful. Okay, so here's our United Flight 707 airport scene. Comes with a fuel truck, baggage cart, tow tug. Just an amazing kit. It was $1.49 compared to the original 98-cent kit. The shadows, like an X-plane on the lake bed at Edwards. You know, you look at this thing and it's like the sun is bright and shiny, and it just has a very California look to it, like it's literally sitting on a lake bed. But there's some other stuff going on this cover. Let's take a look. You got the Hollywood star walking down the red carpet. And by the way, there was a red carpet in the kit. It was paper, but it was the red carpet. And there's a photographer taking a picture of the fuel truck, if you look at where the camera is aimed. And speaking of the fuel truck, there's the guy up on the wing. How did he get up there? There's no ladder. And again, I say this with love and respect for the artwork. This was Richard Cusciati did this painting. But these were little devices that got you to look at the cover and hopefully buy the kit and walk out the door of the hobby shop with this under your arm. Oh, and here's another curiosity. Win a free trip to Disneyland. Okay, well, that's great, except it's on a kit of a United DC-7. The official airline at Disneyland was TWA. Just saying. And the last of the three kits is the DC-7C, which was just a very elegant airplane, the first truly intercontinental aircraft with a 4,000-mile range, which, believe it or not, was longer than the first 707s and DC-8s that went into service, first jets. But what made the 7C, and the name is a play on words there, 7 Cs, meaning truly around the globe. What made this airplane different from the standard DC-7? Well, I think the most obvious difference, the tail was taller. The wings were 12 feet longer in span by way of two 6-foot extensions at the root there. That accomplished a few other byproducts. The fuel capacity was enlarged, number one. And number two, the engines were spaced that much further away from the fuselage, making the cabin just a bit quieter and a little bit less vibration. But the final modification, if you look at the tops of each engine nacelle, those are called saddle tanks. So that's extra fuel, again, for that long range. So there's Revell's cover, another Cusciati illustration of the Swissair airplane flying over the Swiss Alps. And here's the 58 Revell catalog. Notice that at the very top of the page, there's the airplane, Swissair DC-7C. And then if you look at the outline in red there, that's the buildup of the kit. Okay, so here's your direction sheet. Again, relatively simple. Everything went together very easily on these kits. But check out the photo and obviously use the source material for the artist doing the direction sheet art. So there's all the apparent modifications of the airplane. But when you build it, guess what? The tail is a bit taller. The propellers have spinners on them now. But believe it or not, this is the American DC-7 with just a few modifications that were easy to do in the original mold of the kit and Swissair decals. Oh, and by the way, that stewardess that was halfway up the boarding stairs, as I've said in some of my other videos, life imitates art. This is a photo my father took boarding a Eastern DC-7B Golden Falcon in Miami on a business trip, taken from the same exact spot. Well, there you have it. A look at Revell's DC-7 models. Hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much for celebrating aviation with Mike Machat. Special thanks to some very dear friends who helped make this video possible. See you next time.